Hello everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. As you know, I absolutely love the current Toyota 4RUNNER and the current Lexus GX because they are built like no other vehicles in the world. In fact, I truly believe that these two vehicles can last next 10, 20, 30, even maybe 40, 50 years because they're built like tanks. They are both built at the Tahara factory in Japan, where I have been many times, and they're built on the exact same line by some of the most experienced production workers and engineered by some of the best engineers in the world. In fact, I'm going to give you 10 reasons why I truly believe these two will outlast any other SUVs in the world. Welcome back. So why do I believe that these two vehicles can outlast and outlive almost any other vehicles in the world? Well, because they are built by some of the best production workers in the world and built in the best factory in the world. But you can see some of those evidences right away when I begin to do my engineer's audit of both the 4RUNNER and the Lexus GX. This is 2023, the 40th anniversary version. And this is also a new Lexus GX, which I own currently. First, let's take a look at the panel alignment and panel fit, because that is an indication and a very important reflection of the quality standard that they used in manufacturing. So if the manufacturing quality on the outside in terms of the body panels and the paint jobs are done right, then most likely everything else is also done right. First, let's take a look at the gap as I always do. So this is the 4RUNNER first, and this is 3.1 millimeter here, 3 millimeters here, and over there is, I think it's about the same. I checked it earlier, and yeah, 3 millimeter and 3.2 millimeters. So pretty well identical, both sides. And if you look at the GX 460, 3.1, 3 millimeter, and on this side, also 3 millimeters, and also 3 millimeters, and also it's completely flat, absolutely in alignment with each other. Same thing on the 4RUNNER, the panel fit and panel alignment are like totally perfect. It's almost like an artist built this from scratch. It's just so well made. And even the gaps between the doors are pretty good too, I think. This is 3.2 millimeters, 3.1, 3.1. And on the other side, I did check earlier, and it's the same gap. Let's go and check on the Lexus over here. And you'll see that the two are basically identical. 3.1, 3.3 millimeters, and 3.0 millimeters. So both sides on the Lexus as well as Toyota 4RUNNER, almost identical, around 3.0 to 3.2 millimeters all around. And that level of precision and that level of tolerance is almost impossible to get. You can go and check some of the most expensive cars, whether it's Rolls-Royce or a flagship BMW, or go and take a look at some of the other super expensive cars. Let's say take a look at Bentley or something, and they will not be able to match the gaps and the panel alignment that these two vehicles have, because they just don't have that level of calibration and also engineering standard compared to these guys. Because once again, they were engineered a while back by traditional engineers who really took pride in the way the panels fit together and the way everything comes together. So the panel alignment is perfect. What about the paint job? Well, as you know, this is pearl white. It's a metallic white. This is a metallic red color. So of course, the two colors are not the same. But if you look at the paint quality by kneeling like this and looking at both sides, you can see almost like a mirror reflection from the front all the way to the back, especially around the door. It's always harder to get the paint job done correctly on the door because these doors are actually assembled and then taken away and assembled again. So it's sometimes tricky to get it all right, but paint matching and the paint quality is perfect. There are always some orange peels around here on both sides. That's very much a signature Toyota Lexus style. They like to have a little bit of orange peel to give that a bit of a kind of a natural organic look. So that's obviously present, but the quality is excellent. Now let's measure the paint thickness to see if there's a difference between these two, but let me also show you just in general why these paints are so durable. So I got my paint thickness gauge. So let me do a quick paint thickness check and audit, because the thicker the paint, obviously the better for durability, but there's a lot more than just the paint thickness when it comes to overall durability, because you also want the right kind of pigmentation and the mixture of the chemical composition. So let's take a look anyways. It's 122 on the 4RUNNER, and in the Lexus it's a little bit thicker because it's triple coated. on this one, and I also have a ceramic coating on this one, so it'll be a little bit thicker. 143, just a little bit thicker. Let's do a quick check on the side. I'm not going to go through the whole paint right now because I've already done that on the previous video. 134 on this side, and in the 4Runner 102, so a little bit thinner as well. So generally speaking, this one is definitely thicker than the 4Runner because there's one extra layer of clear coat on the Lexus GX. But what I wanted to explain to you is that not everything can be explained by the paint thickness, because these use slightly older type of paint technology, and that's why the paint job tends to be a little bit thicker. When you measure the paint thickness on the newer models using modern equipment and modern machine, you'll find the paint job is getting thinner and thinner because they're choosing a type of paint that can allow for that thinner version to be used. So those are some comments about the paint job. Also keep in mind that unlike modern vehicles these days, almost every panel, in fact every panel, is indeed steel in the case of GX or 4Runner. And the way to check is using the paint thickness gauge again. It tells me whether it's iron or aluminum, so I can actually tell the type of material. And all the panels are indeed steel, which is a mixture of composite steel obviously, and they're designed to deflect minor deflection, better than aluminum in many ways. So for example, if you open a door and hit each other here, for example, in the tight parking spot, you're going to find that these thicker steel panels will resist dent better. I had, in fact, a couple of people actually bang their door into this GX. You know what? There's nothing. Not even the paint got chipped, but also there was no door ding because these metals are a little bit thicker than the newer models that the Toyota is building. Because as they engineer new models, well, they're switching to aluminum panels, which is a little bit softer in their quality of materials, but also they're making them thinner as much as possible to reduce weight and to reduce cost. And so those are some of the interesting things that you also need to know because the metals are absolutely thick. Now let's take a look at the underneath the engine here, and I might make some comments about the powertrain, and then we will take a look inside. I'm going to show you once again why these two vehicles will last a lifetime. So before I talk about this powertrain, let me get back to the 10 reasons why I believe these two vehicles will last a lifetime. So the first one I talked about is the actual alignment and fit and finish of the body panels. Why does that matter? Well, because if all the panels are welded together well, they're aligned together well, and there's no issues in terms of body fit and finish, then the panels will last long time over a course of 10, 20, 30 years, because those panels won't shift or go out of alignment, rubbing with each other and so forth. So that's the first reason. And second reason is I talked about the paint thickness and how it is a little bit thicker in these vehicles, especially in the Lexus, compared to some other Toyota models, but also that they use a slightly different kind of chemical composition and pigmentation that are designed to last a long time. So that's the second reason why I believe even the paint job will last a long time. Thirdly, because these are still using kind of traditional steel panels as opposed to aluminum panels, you're going to find that they resist dent better. They tend to be easier to repair if there's an accident, because obviously repairing aluminum panels is much more difficult, not to mention that sometimes they're hard to get these days because of shortages. And therefore, the steel panels will just be durable over a longer period of time. Obviously, if you scuff a paint, then aluminum is a little bit better in resisting corrosion, but even aluminum can corrode over time. So those are some of the reasons I gave you so far. The fourth reason why I do believe these two vehicles could last many decades, more than any other reasons, are the powertrains. We have the V8 engine here, 4.6 liter, proven engine from Toyota/Lexus that's been used for many years. And in the 4Runner, we have the 4-liter V6 engine, also being around for a long time, and it's used in many vehicles, including the current Land Cruiser 300 series, which are not sold in North America, but sold in many parts of Asia. They still offer this 4-liter engine out there. So you know that it has to be reliable if it's still going into a Land Cruiser 300 series. And the main thing is not so much about the power or torque, because obviously both of these will be weaker in terms of power output and also torque output compared to newer turbo engines that are coming out there. And when this GX is replaced by a 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6, and the 4Runner eventually gets replaced by a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, obviously the new versions will have much more power and torque at lower RPM, and therefore they're going to feel better on the road. But when it comes to simplicity, ability to maintain these engines easily, and then also things like ease of getting the parts and ease of replacing the parts. There's no question that these two engines that are sort of a dinosaur from our perspective will prove to be extremely reliable. A good friend of mine, as you know, is Amit at Car Care Nut, and we talk about these two vehicles. In fact, he owns a GX as well, and we talk about the fact that while these engines are gas guzzling and they're obviously not fuel efficient in both cases, if you want a simple engine that can last you a lifetime, easy to fix, easy to repair, and easy to maintain, well, there's nothing out there that are as well built and as reliable and durable as the V8 engine in the Lexus and the V6 engine in the 4Runner. So those make up the fourth reason why I believe these things will last a long time. So we're now into fifth reason why these two will last many decades to come. Well, attached to the actual two engines are also the transmissions. We have proven but outdated 5-speed transmission on the 4Runner and 6-speed on the GX. Again, those two are super outdated in terms of technology, and they're not the best in terms of fuel efficiency just because of the number of gears. But once again, much like the Powertrain, they have been around for a very long time, and then they have been proven to be reliable over many, many years. They are built by some of the best Toyota suppliers in the world, and they are built in Japan, just like their engines and the body as well. So the transmission are not the smoothest shifting one, but they're very predictable and also very easy to service, and that contributes to the reason why these things will last a long time. Now let me talk about 6 reasons why these cars could last forever. And once again, it's to do with the metal structures. When they build these vehicles, they're using steel panels, as I mentioned earlier, but also these panels are a little bit thicker, and they're welded a bit different than some of the modern technologies. What do I mean by that? Well, you can look at the all of the panels here and the edge. You can literally measure the thickness of the metal edge here because it wraps around like this. And they weld these things using what we call spot welding. Then they use a special adhesive to seal everything up. But you can just tell by knocking on it how thick the metals are. At least 5 to 8% thicker than some of the modern steel panels because they're trying to save weight. So they keep reducing the thickness of the metals. So all of these panels are a bit thicker than most of the other newer models from Toyota. And also because we're using more of a traditional spot welding versus laser welding or sometimes adhesives, which are common nowadays in the modern vehicles, the structural rigidity and the integrity of the welding is absolutely first class. It is pretty hard to take these things apart. You have to actually use what we call a destructive tool to literally put the tool inside the two panels to take this apart because they are welded so well together. And that isn't quite the same for the new models that you see from other brands as they move to easier, lighter, and faster method of welding the pieces together. And especially they're doing more of the adhesive type welding where they actually glue pieces together using special glue. And they're structurally strong, but it's not quite the same as using a spot welding equipment and actually welding the pieces together. So even though the overall structural rigidity of new models are actually very good, in terms of durability and long-term use, there's nothing that can quite beat the way that these cars and these vehicles are built at places like Tahara factory. The 7th factor for the reliability and long-term durability of these vehicles to do with components. So whether it's the suspension pieces or even the wheels, as well as all of the different intricate components that goes into the engine compartment, you have to remember that these vehicles are built in Tahara factory with suppliers that have been supplying these components for the last decade or longer. So they're proven reliable tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers that have learned to make the components as solid and as durable as possible. But what's happening with the newer models from Toyota and Lexus are that these suppliers are being asked to reduce the weight and come up with a cheaper method for producing them, and to also to use less materials because we have shortages of materials. So they're making these components with less plastic, less metal, and just in general, less material, period. So it's not just the engine or transmission, it's not just the big components that really matter. It's all of the smallest parts that they make for the 4Runner and the GX by the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. Those companies have also been affected by the new way of thinking which is to try to kind of work around the material shortages, and they have to do that by simply reducing the amount of materials being used. The eighth reason why these cars could last forever is to do with the simplicity. We just don't have the more complex features in the 4Runner or the GX as it stands today. We don't have adaptive suspension. I don't even have air suspension on my GX. So the less components, the less complication, the longer they last and easier to maintain. So for example, these cars don't have turbochargers or superchargers or special intercoolers that goes with the superchargers and turbochargers, and they don't have sophisticated computerized equipment such as adaptive variable suspension, which I mentioned already. And so the whole thing is simpler. We don't even have automatic rear tailgate on the 4Runner. It's just manual. Same thing on the GX. These are all manual here. We do have a rolling rear window on the 4Runner, which is a very important feature for many of you guys. And I can pop out the window on the GX, but it's not even powered. So overall, if you look at the number of electric motors, number of computer chips, and just sheer number of materials being used in these vehicles, well, they're just much simpler and easier to service and easier to maintain. So those are some of the other factors that contribute to whether cars last a long time and stays reliable for a long time, and that's my eighth reason. Let me give you my ninth reason. And the ninth reason, again, have to do with the material selection and the way materials are being engineered. If you look at the thickness of these plastic moldings and plastic components, it's at least 5 to maybe even 10% thicker than most modern vehicles. So when the new 4Runner comes out, maybe let's say in a year or year and a half time, you can be sure that these components that involves plastic materials and the vinyl materials will be thinner because they're trying to save weight and they're trying to save time and also money. And so obviously if you were to take, let's say a hammer and try to punch it through this dash panel, which is something you wouldn't do, you're gonna have a heck of a time doing that in the current 4Runner or a current GX because these things are so thick and so stiff and also just so strong. But try that on a modern car, it will likely go through easier because the materials have gotten so much thinner than it used to be. And that's all to do with saving time and saving money, obviously, by using thinner materials. And I'm talking about not just these plastic components, but even the thickness of the leather on the steering, even the thickness of the material on the door. You can tell how thick it is just by pressing it. And these plastic components too. And you look at the thickness of the plastic, wow, you know what? They just don't make parts like they used to. So that is my ninth reason why it will last such a long time, simply because the materials are thicker and more durable than modern materials that you see in today's cars. The 10th and the final reason why I can explain to you in terms of the durability of both the Lexus GX and the 4Runner that I'm setting in is the fact that we don't have a very complicated high-tech components inside the vehicle. I don't have a digital dash here. I don't have a large screen that sometimes can give a problem in other brands especially. And I still have a normal buttons that you can press for temperature control, for radios. And I have a normal shifter up here, not some of the more complicated electric type shifter that sometimes you see in the new models. I have actual dial for seat warmer and seat heaters. Everything functions like they should, and everything uses normal buttons. And these buttons are designed to last 20, 25, maybe even 30 years and beyond because they've gone through such a rigorous testing for many years and they've proven to be absolutely defect-free for many years. Compare that to some of the newer models where we have a large infotainment system here, a digital cluster here, and that replaces almost everything in the instrumentation and also functionality. So if something goes wrong with that particular infotainment system, we're screwed because there's no button sometime and we can't control or manage or use some of the functionalities simply because the infotainment system have shut down. And that actually has happened to many brands, not so much Toyota and Lexus, but even for Toyota and Lexus, let's say 25, 30 years down the road, we don't have an assurance that these complete digital type instrumentations and high-tech feature will stay totally defect-free. Those are things we don't know yet because so much of the new technology have just arrived, including some of the safety systems and so forth. So they haven't quite gone through the same kind of things that these older models have gone through because these cars have been around for a long time and therefore we know that none of these things have gone wrong and they're remaining to be very reliable. I still think that at the end of the day, when you have a simple system with simple components that are designed and built and engineered by proven suppliers, you know what? You just know that they will last literally forever. So those are some of the things I want to point out, because I still very much love the current 4Runner and current GX, and I'm going to keep the GX for probably forever, because it will literally last forever. And even though I look forward to seeing the new GX and the new 4Runner at some point, I may not buy them simply because I'm not convinced they're going to be as reliable as these two vehicles, at least in the short run. Maybe in a few years' time, let's say 2026, 2027, when the new generation of a 4Runner and the GX have been around for 3-4 years, then I might change my mind, because at that point, I know for sure those vehicles will likely be defect-free and trouble-free, and they could also last many years to come. But until such time, I'm sticking with my traditional proven 4Runner and also the GX, because I'm very excited to own them, but also to drive them, because they have the very special kind of driving feel that is often missing in today's modern SUVs. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope you learned something about the current 4Runner and the current GX, and perhaps you will buy one, because I can just about guarantee that they will serve a lifetime of happiness and joy and trouble-free driving if you do buy them and own them. I hope you can give me a thumbs up and make some comments, and if you haven't done so, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you very much.